In this video, we are going to be talking about Venus retrograde. This just finished, and this comes around about every 18 months, I believe. And we're all familiar with Mercury retrograde, but Venus retrograde is pretty important, and I really should have made this video before it ended, but if you've had some weird relationship stuff come up recently, then maybe the retrograde can explain that a little bit. My name is Catherine. I'm an energy healer, spiritual coach, and nurse practitioner. If you need personalized coaching or an energy healing from yours truly, then you can go to my website at catherineglassman.com, or you can email me at hello@catherineglassman.com. I am going to apologize if you can hear my dog whining in the background. He really wants to come into this room, and the reason why is because he found something in my backyard. So let me show you. Okay, I have a sock that I cut. But inside the sock is a little baby opossum. We have named her Crash because I believe she came crashing out of the tree. Okay, baby. It's a girl. Okay. Only in Texas, right? So anyway, we will be dropping her off at the rehab here soon. But for now, I'm just caring for her, bottle feeding her puppy formula. And then we're gonna take her, look at her tail like curling around my hand. But yeah, I'll be honest, I thought about keeping her, but I feel like she's still so young that I think she can still be very wild and learn to fend for herself. But I'm just keeping her for the weekend so then I can take her to the center. But she has been practicing climbing trees and hanging. She's very good, just in case. Oh! Okay, well, anyway, that's Crash. So I'm gonna stick her back in her sock. She really likes it. So my dog, do you want to go back in there? Here you go. Go ahead. Go ahead. There you go. Okay. So I have a nice little box set up for her that's got a heating pad and a little stuffed animal and some tree branches. She's very well taken care of. But anyway, just a little Texas life update for you. So, Venus retrograde. Now, in astrology, we understand that each planet represents something, some sort of aspect within our life. Okay, so Mercury, or Mercury retrograde, is the planet is responsible for communication and intellect and the way that we think, the way that we process our thoughts, and the way we think through a situation. And so when Mercury is in retrograde, there tends to be a lot of communication issues, a lot of just inability to form sentences, like your thinking is just a little off, like your cognition is different. This is because this is the time to reevaluate certain situations, whether it is the way you communicate with other people, the way that you are doing business with other people, contracts, just agreements, things like that. Because it's an evaluation period, you're really not supposed to make any big decisions. You're just really supposed to sit on it and just think about it. This is the same thing with Venus retrograde, except Venus is the planet of love and relationships and values and beauty. Okay? So when this planet is in retrograde, this means that relationships are going to come into the forefront of your mind and really present itself as something that you really need to not only pay attention to, but reevaluate. This not only applies to romantic relationships, but also to just all of your relationships in general, whether they're friendships, the way that you relate to your family members, your parents, your siblings, cousins, just the way that you relate to other people specifically. And I feel bad because I obviously should have made this video before the retrograde started, but I think I was just so focused on my own growth and my own stuff that I was just really entrenched in that. And I guess I just didn't have enough of the information and the tools to really share with you guys at the time because I was just too busy battling my own things. So I apologize. And I'm still integrating some of the information, but I still want to share what I know at least with you. So why should you take the time to analyze your relationships? Sometimes we have friendships or just romantic partners or family members that are in our lives out of loyalty, out of, just them being family or whatever. And sometimes we don't really consciously think about why we have these people in our lives. And there's nothing wrong with having anybody in our lives or anybody not in our lives. That's not the point. The point is to consciously understand who we have in our lives, how they're in our lives, and to what capacity. So basically, when I was channeling this information, the image that I got was, I don't know if it's like a network of neurons, maybe. That's kind of what it looked like. It looked like electricity. But basically, if you're like one neuron or one cell and you connect with another cell, you either connect and pass back and forth information and electricity, and the connection becomes more powerful, or you can connect with one that is more depleted than you are and therefore ends up taking more of the energy, or vice versa. And so with that connection from one cell to another, that's just one connection. But then that other cell connects to another one. And then you also connect to another one. So you could be connected to a cell here that is a very powerful connection, and you're giving equal energy back and forth, and that connection is becoming stronger, whereas a connection over here that you have is depleting you. And so all of the energy that you're kind of generating from over here ends up getting funneled over to this energy over here. But then you have another connection that you have like maybe like a desperate energy or a very like a pleading energy. And so you're trying to cling on to as much energy from this particular cell as much as possible, right? And then the visual I got, it was just a network of all of this like kind of chaos, right? And so this is the reason why it's important to understand and be conscious about where your energy is going and whose energy you're taking in. So ultimately, this is really a matter of energy transfer. Now, as someone who is spiritual or is going through a spiritual awakening, what will most likely happen is you will have more energy than the majority of the people that are around you. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I want to make it very clear that I'm not saying that anyone is better than anyone. We obviously know that because, we all have been in a place where we were not awakened, right? And so there is no right or wrong. There is no hierarchy of anything, okay? However, if you are someone who is an adult and you're going through a spiritual awakening, it just means that you're waking up you're becoming conscious of your own life that you've created. And sometimes most of the time, you wake up to realize that the life that you have created up until this point has been out of a subconscious programming. And it was never really a conscious decision. There was really no true intention. It was just sort of a place that you found yourself out of circumstance and maybe luck. Of course, we know it's not luck and everything is divinely orchestrated, and you set up contracts so that you fulfill certain things and lessons throughout your lifetime, right? So, regardless, you wake up and you start to realize that a lot of the people that you have been surrounded by are not necessarily conscious. Because if they were conscious, then it probably would have sparked a little bit more intentionality within you. But if it didn't, then there's a good chance that they probably are not as intentional themselves, okay? And listen, I'm totally speaking from personal experience too, by the way. So, because you find yourself within this space, now you're starting to move through your life with intention, with being a little bit more conscious, and with your eyes more open and your mind more open. Because of this, you are able to take in more information from the universe in different ways. One of the ways is through your psychic abilities, okay? Because you're starting to open your mind to different possibilities, it means that your reality is becoming more open. If you actually start to think that telekinesis is an actual thing that people can practice, you open yourself up to being able to be that person that can practice telekinesis. Or even if you were to make it something a little bit more simple than that, like being content and happy every day, right? That is something that not a lot of people can actually do. And so when you start to discover that that is something that you can truly have, then it means that you have more possibility, and therefore you end up having more energy. Okay? Because you're open-minded, you're taking all of this energy in, you're taking all of this information in, it means that you are now becoming like this battery pack, kind of, right? This is why there are some people that have more energy, like a bigger aura, like they're just a little bit more magnetic. There's just more to them, right? And this typically will happen with a very spiritual person. And I'm not saying that you necessarily have to be like an actively, openly spiritual person, because spirituality is not something that needs to be claimed. You can have a person that doesn't believe in God, right? Be extremely magnetic and extremely spiritual just in the way they move through life. They don't necessarily have to believe in God to know that there is some sort of universal consciousness, right? So, of course, it's all about like wording and semantics, but you catch my drift. Like they don't like I don't know, a butterfly doesn't have to know it's like like beauty to know that it's beautiful. Or it doesn't have to know that it's beautiful in order to be beautiful. So, as you start to awaken, as you start to become more spiritual and more intentional, you just start to grab more energy from the universe because you have more energy. You have more energy to give. And so when you have energy to give, that means that you now need to be a little bit more aware and conscious about where this energy goes. Not only do you need to be more conscious about where it goes, you also need to understand that you are also becoming more sensitive to energies as well. So, at the same time of being aware of where your energy goes, you have to be aware of the kind of energy you're bringing in. Because energy is very subtle, or at least it starts off very subtle initially. And if you're interacting with someone and initially it can start off as something very innocent, as, just talking about the weather. I don't know. And then eventually the next conversation can turn into talking about a person. And then the next conversation talks about, how they really don't like this person, right? And as you build this relationship, that energy becomes stronger and starts to have like this snowball effect, okay? Eventually, the snowball will get so big that then you start to feel what's actually happening. And you start to realize that this energy is not something that you like. It doesn't feel good. It makes you feel a little off, right? And so if you are sensitive or if you're an empath, then you will be able to pick these things up. But if you are not an empath, it can be difficult to understand what's actually happening because at some point you're going to feel not well or just uncomfortable, or you're just not going to like what is going on. And you may not actually understand why, and you may certainly not understand where it's coming from. So, this is why taking a look at all of your relationships is important, because there is an energy transfer that is happening all the time. And even though we can go to sleep and meditate and take vacations and replenish our energy, we really should treat it as like a precious commodity and something that is limited. Because even though, time and energy are ultimately limitless, right? Like energy can't be created nor destroyed, just changed in form. We still are living in a human body in the third dimension. And therefore, within this plane of existence, time is limited and our energy can be depleted. And so our energy is limited. Within this reality, I don't know what the average lifespan is. It's between, 70 to 80, right? So if you are in your 30s to 40s, that's half of your life. And relationships take up a very big fraction of your life. So, how do we choose which people to have in our lives and to what capacity? Well, the first question is, what is the energy that is cultivated when you interact with this person? Do you feel energized? Do you feel positive? Do you feel uplifted? Do you feel motivated? Do you feel inspired? Or do you feel anxious? Do you feel depleted? Do you feel self-conscious? Do you feel embarrassed? Do you feel angry? Do you feel resentful? Do you feel jealous? Now, of course, it will take time to actually identify what it is that you feel from that relationship. And this takes conscious effort. And once you've identified which energy it is or how you feel, then you can kind of think about consciously where on the vibrational scale or what frequency you think that that particular feeling is in. And once you kind of have figured out where, like which frequency that is, then you can decide whether that is a frequency you would like to stay in or if it is a frequency that you would like to change. Now, if it's a frequency that you'd like to stay in, then great, which is awesome. It's so nice to have those relationships. But if it is not a frequency that you want to stay in, then you're going to have to take steps to either start cultivating the energy that you want within that relationship, or you're going to have to make the decision to start pulling your energy back to yourself and not giving more of your beautiful, precious energy to a frequency that you don't want to be in. And I want to make it very clear that this doesn't mean that you have to just cut somebody off or you have to just stop talking to someone. I'm definitely not saying that. Obviously, there is a certain way to go about doing things like this, right? Because other people do have feelings and you want to be very mindful of that. You don't want to hurt other people's feelings or make them feel like, that you're just too good to be their friend or anything like that necessarily. We want to be respectful and tactful and come from a place of compassion and love because we all have issues. We all go through certain things, and sometimes we're just not the best version of ourselves. And when we're not the best version of ourselves, sometimes we present that to other people like friends or family or whoever. And based on who you were in that time and space, they may make the decision to pull back their energy from you because they don't want to feel your energy, right? So, always keep that in mind. There are things that people go through, and so we just want to have compassion. But at the same time, it's okay to have compassion and understanding, but you also still need to be mindful and protective of your own energy because even if you want to try to help someone, right? This is kind of a more of like a codependency thing, but even if someone is in a darker place and you want to help them, it's okay for you to do that, but you have to understand that you are probably not going to be getting anything back other than whatever energy they are currently in. So if they're in a darker space, that is the energy that they're able to give, and you have to understand that. And so if they can't reach back to you, it's not fair to be resentful or frustrated or anything like that, okay? Because you can't control other people. You can't control how they feel and what they're going to do. The only thing that you can control is yourself and what you do with your energy. Of course, this is going to be a case by case scenario, and we all have free will to make the decision on how we are going to interact with certain people and to what capacity and how much of our energy we're willing to give to a particular person, knowing that they can't give that energy back to us. I personally have had to learn this lesson the hard way, and everyone is different, right? There are some people who have just this endless amount of giving energy, right? Like it's just completely endless. Now, of course, is it truly endless? It is rare for one to have that kind of energy. I mean, really, the one person that comes to mind would be Jesus, right? But for most of us, it can be depleting, right? And because you want to give and you want to be there for other people, and it feels good to be there for other people until you find yourself just completely drained and maybe even feel like taken advantage of, right? And wondering why you're not getting that same caring and compassionate energy back to you. Okay, so there was a time in my life where I attracted a lot of frenemies, right? People or girls who I thought were my friend when really there was like an underlying jealousy or just a weird like hate of some sort, okay? Now, this may or may not be a secret. I'm not sure if I've mentioned it on this channel, but I am self-diagnosed on the spectrum, okay? Hear me out. I took a test, okay, as an adult. It was negative, all right? However, had I taken this test when I was younger, it would have been positive, all right? I didn't start speaking till I was 5. I was very socially awkward and to the point where I would get in trouble with my parents because I would just be playing by myself and another kid would come to play with me and I would just kind of ignore them. And they would tell me that I was rude, that I was not friendly at all. And this would actually happen like throughout my childhood as I got older too. Okay. Because of these experiences, I've had to kind of just learn what was socially acceptable. Oh, another thing is that I would say things to kids that were mean, but I didn't realize that it was mean because I wasn't saying it to be mean. I was just saying it because I thought it was something that I should say or that I was just sharing information. Okay. And so and I always felt more comfortable being alone. I had like sensory problems and I still kind of do. Like I just, sound is very particular for me. And so, I always have earplugs when I go to music festivals or concerts. I'm always messing with like sound settings. ASMR, I cannot stand. Can't stand it. I won't do it. And so if there is a video where there's a lot of nail clicking or they're like slapping an item just to be like silly and funny, I quickly have to change from it. Okay. And so, of course, women tend to get diagnosed later on in life or completely missed as a diagnosis for autism because female humans apparently research has shown that female babies pay more attention to facial expressions and adapt their behavior according to like their parents' facial expressions as like a way of like looking for approval, which apparently is the reason why women are able to mask a little bit better than men are as far as being on the spectrum goes. Okay. So, with this being said, as I got older and into my adulthood and trying to form adult relationships with other women, I found myself in these weird relationships where they actually didn't really like me. Like they liked me, like they wanted to like me, but there was a jealousy and there was a weird just a strange vibe where they weren't really my friend. It was so strange. And it took me forever to figure out what was going on because I would become really close friends with a girl. And then eventually they would start to make like snide comments or like they would kind of put me down, but they would form it in a like a joking way. Now, of course, I have friends where like we just like, give each other a hard time and tease each other, right? But it would be different with these particular women. And then eventually it would become like a snowball effect, right? Where something bigger would happen that would definitely clue me in that they actually were not my friend and they didn't like me. Things like, I don't know, secretly like calling and texting the guy that I was seeing, right? Like and just even hearing it come out of my mouth, it sounds like reality TV or something. It's just, but the thing is that I really didn't understand what was happening because I don't get that. I've never been jealous of a person. I can totally want something that they have. Like if they have a big house or if they are, traveling all over the world, like, yeah, I can definitely want those things too. But I think when I hear of jealousy, it's almost as if I like would not want them to have those things or thinking that they don't deserve those things. And so I've never felt that. I've only wanted to just have the things too, right? So anyway, it was just something that I didn't understand. And so this was all happening pre-awakening. Post-awakening, I would find myself in those scenarios again, but then I was able to quickly pick up on it because now I'm being a little bit more conscious about like the energy that's coming from them and how much of my energy I'm giving to them. Because if you're my friend, like I'm going to give you like so much loving energy because I just love you. You're my friend. But I've had to learn that not everybody operates that way. And so there are people out there that will graciously just take all of your energy and not only not give anything back to you, but maybe if they give it back to you, it'll be not so high vibing. Okay. So, anyway, that's a little bit about me. Of course, I think this is the reason why I love the show Love on the Spectrum. I don't watch reality TV, but I watched all of that because I just find it to be so wholesome, and it's it's going to make me emotional right now. Yeah, I just really, I don't know, I feel for them. Now, of course, I found myself in those situations because I was just excited to be around other people that shared similar interests. And so it was nice to just spend time with other girls doing very similar things. But had I taken the time to be a little bit more conscious and to evaluate my relationships, would have saved me a lot of pain and a lot of suffering. And this is why Venus retrograde is important to understand and to respect and to take advantage of. Now, of course, this also applies to romantic relationships. Choosing a partner over a lifetime will be one of the most important decisions you ever make. Choosing a partner to get married to, like be legally bound to another person, someone that you are going to have children with, that you will live with, that is a very big decision. And so, of course, you should be evaluating that relationship. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're nitpicking at it, but you just don't want to be on autopilot with the most important relationship that you're going to have. You don't want it to be on autopilot. You want it to flow naturally. And what I mean by this is there is still a subconscious programming that we are battling. The subconscious programming is the mechanism that happens within our brain that keeps us safe. Our brain is wired to opt more for the negativity rather than the positive outcome. And it's certainly hardwired for routine and the things that we're used to versus the things that we are trying to actively change. And so if you grew up in a home with, trauma, or it was just dysfunctional, then that is your natural wiring from a psychological standpoint. And so when you move into adulthood and you start to form relationships, if you are on a subconscious autopilot program, then you are going to revert back to everything that you experienced within childhood. And so as you start to consciously think about the things that you want, then once you start to attract those kinds of relationships, then those should flow very easily. And you should feel very good and calm. But if you're constantly questioning the relationship, or you feel anxious, or you just feel like something is off, then that definitely is something worth looking at. Are we asking ourselves, are we in this relationship because we're scared to be alone? Are we in this relationship out of pity? Like we just don't want to leave them because we don't know what will happen to them? Do you like your partner? Do you like who they are? Are you proud to be with them and to be standing next to them? Or are you a little embarrassed or ashamed? If you could do it all over again, would you choose to be with them all over again? Why are these things important to think about during a Venus retrograde? Well, during the retrograde, everything involving relationships is going to come to a head. There is a good chance that ex-partners or ex-lovers will start to make their way back into your life. You might get a phone call, you might get a text, you might get a DM on social media. okay? But they are going to come back. This is a way for you to be challenged and to be tested. And there is no right or wrong, pass or fail. It's just more of a period to evaluate you, self evaluation of where you are. Are you going to continue to give energy to this particular relationship? Or are you going to pull back because you don't want that kind of relationship and instead you want to put time, intention, and energy into this type of relationship? During this retrograde, I had quite a few exes reach out to me, and for various reasons, but regardless, it happened. Oh, and I had an ex coworker from, geez, 12 years ago reach out to me, and I don't even I don't have this guy's social media. I didn't have his phone number saved. And I don't like when people text me and it's from a an unknown number, I usually don't answer it. But for some reason I felt compelled. And so, I asked who it was and he said, his name, and then I remembered, and I worked at this place for a very short amount of time. I did not, and I why did he have my number? I don't remember why he had my number, but because we never hung out outside of work. But he was a security guard, and I do remember a time where I had to be walked out for a period. And so I think he was probably one of the security guards that like walked me to my car. So anyway, yeah, he reached out of the blue, and it was just so strange. Regardless, I quickly told him that like I have a partner and I am going to respect that. So I'm just going to stop texting now. And I literally said that. I'm going to stop texting now, but it was nice talking to you. Okay. And I'm really grateful that I understood that Venus was in retrograde because I knew that these things were going to happen. Core issues within your current relationships are also going to rise. And so, if there has been like this underlying issue that has been kind of swept under the rug, then during the retrograde, it is just going to come up to a full head and it's going to make you really look at it and confront it. And, this is really good. This is meant to happen because we want to clear out the old energy and bring in new intentional energy so that when Venus goes direct, that is the period of time where it becomes the integration period where we start to practice what we have decided. So, unfortunately, the retrograde is just another period of time that is going to be very uncomfortable, but very necessary. So, what should you do during this time? First of all, you want to establish what kind of relationships you want to have. More importantly, what kind of energy you want to cultivate within that relationship and what kind of energy you would like to let go of. Because you can change the energy and change the relationship without letting go of the person. So you can still have the same person within your life, but let go of certain aspects within that relationship. During this time, you want to become very clear and very specific about what you want. And then you also have to be honest with yourself and ask yourself if you are really getting that within that relationship. You also need to decide on whether or not you are willing to make sacrifices for the betterment of this relationship. Because even though the majority of this video has been more about evaluating if you are getting the things that you need out of a relationship, what's equally important, if not more important, is understand what you bring to the relationship. Are you the person that you say that you want in your life? Are you talking the talk and walking the walk? Because there has to be equality and balance. I was just talking about this with someone recently, right? They were telling me that So my partner was telling me about a friend and told me the story about his friend being on dating apps and talking to this girl. And this girl admitted that she would just go out on dates just to get free dinners. Okay. And so, you know, okay, that is her prerogative. But you cannot be a girl that only goes out on dates just to take advantage of men and their money and to feed you while simultaneously wondering where that good guy is, right? You can't, and I used this example as well, right? Like a guy can't follow, half naked women on social media, but then look for or ask for a traditional good woman to be at home with him, right? Like, are you the person that you are also looking for? So, are you willing to make sacrifices within yourself for the betterment of the relationship? Are you willing to grow and to change? I for sure know that there are things that I need to change about myself. And that's another thing too. If you are finding that there is some disturbance or just like a chaotic energy within your relationships, sure, you should take the time to evaluate if this relationship is good for you. But also, you should also think about if this relationship actually is very good for you and if it's just drawing out this piece of you that you need to let go of. Is this person acting as a mirror for you to show you who you can be in relationships at times? Is this a relationship that really is bringing out the worst in you or the worst of you? Or is it a relationship that is bringing out the worst of you so that you can see the worst of you so you can let that piece go? Lots to think about. Venus is currently going direct now. And so there is just a lot of facets and aspects to think about when it comes to your own personal relationships. It's a lot of work. It takes a lot of intention and just a lot of energy and consciousness. And a lot of people aren't doing it, which is why it's important that you, as the spiritual person, does it. Because the majority of humanity is still operating from a subconscious autopilot programming. Okay? And so when you go through an awakening, that means you're being chosen to wake up during that time so that you can change the program. And when I got to this part of the meditation, I got a visual of a person on dry land looking into a body of water, like a lake or an ocean. And underneath the water was another person. And they are holding hands and they're kind of going back and forth. And so sometimes the person on the land would pull the other person out of the water and they would be breathing, right? And the sun would be shining on their face. And then sometimes that person would pull themselves back into the water and take the dry land person and drag them into the water. And they would be like blowing bubbles and like almost kind of drowning and panicking. Okay. And again, this is not meant to be like offensive or to put anyone down or anything like that, okay? But what that visual meant was that as the spiritually awakened individual, you are the person on the dry land, right? And holding on to somebody who is drowning can lead you to a place where you end up drowning yourself. And so it's an important decision to make. Are you going to let go so that you can stay on dry land? Or are you going to fight and pull that person out? There are some relationships that you will not be able to save, but there are some relationships that not only will you be able to save, but you will help elevate. This is what a lot of us have been called to do. Of course, this is going to be a personal decision on whether or not this is something that you want to do and how much time and energy you're willing to give into it in order to pull that person out from drowning. But just like that network of neurons that I talked about earlier in the video, eventually, if we gain enough momentum, more of the neurons will start to light up. And just across the board, it will just become brighter and more beautiful. But in order to do that, we just have to be a little bit more intentional of where our light goes. So I hope that makes sense. I'll try to be a little bit better about letting you know when the next Venus retrograde is coming. But I hope you liked the video. Give it a thumbs up if you did. Consider subscribing, and I will see you next time. Say bye.